We are back here at the Twitch live stream. Again, we're broadcasting live at the back of the expo hall here by the AWS Village. So if you're at reInvent and you want to participate live, definitely come back and check us out. But I'm actually very excited because we have IOpipe here. So welcome.
Thank you.
And can you please kind of introduce both of yourselves and tell us a little bit about IOpipe?
Sure. I'm Erica Windish. I'm CTO and co-founder of IOpipe.
And I'm Adam Johnson, the CEO and co-founder of IOpipe.
Cool. And what is IOpipe?
Yeah, so we provide debug tools for developers of Amazon Lambda to debug, operate, observe their application. And what we're launching this week is profiling. So we have IOpipe with profiling, and you can dig in and see really deeply inside your function all the system call, all the calls, lines of code that function calls are made, how long they took. It really granular information.
Cool. And we are going to dive into a demo of that momentarily.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But you mentioned you just recently launched that.
Yeah.
And it was at the Midnight Madness event on Sunday here at reInvent.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that event was and what that experience was like for IOpipe?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. We, let's see, we got notified like days ahead, like maybe 3 days in advance.
Yeah.
And we were invited to come up on stage, and they had the death of the mainframe, and then we came on, and it was like the death of the mainframe, and now it's the new thing is serverless, and this next generation of computing, and then Andy Jazzy came on, and then Shaq, we had Shaquille O'Neal come on and DJ.
He is a very big DJ.
Yes.
He's the biggest DJ.
Give me 1 second. Get Gina for the password on this. So the new service that you launched, can we see the same demo you guys did at the Midnight Madness?
Of course.
I heard there was a
Yes.
really spectacular Slack demo that you had.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. And while Erica's getting it ready, like the cool thing is that since we only had a couple days to repair, we had an initial demo that was basically like a meme generator in Slack, but we were talking and wanted to make it much more exciting for that Midnight Madness event. So Erica coded up a whole new demo on the plane using Amazon Recognition, Lambda, and S3. So basically, the idea is that you post any image into Slack, and it sends that off to Recognition, and sends back into Slack a description of what that image looks like. And the purpose of that was actually for visually impaired folks to get a better idea of what's being posted in Slack. We actually have a visually impaired person on our team, and that serves that purpose. So we thought that was a really cool little demo to put together really quickly.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really amazing how quickly we could put together this Slack bot. Like it's a really powerful thing. We put together in like 2 days. I actually wrote it up on the plane, so
That was,
or at least most of it.
It's not possible a couple of years ago, I think.
No, I don't think so. So let me. I'm going to paste an image here. So this is what this Slack bot does is it when you paste an image into Slack. The bot, Slack sends them a notification to Lambda. Lambda will then fetch that image, upload to S3, and then it sends that bucket name and key to Recognition. And then it all goes back to Slack. So I'm going to just start with uploading the image. Do that again. It actually detected it, but it doesn't. Slack won't unfurl it if you paste it too many times recently. And so I'm going to start with, this is actually the image. I'm going to expand it. It's an image of mountains. So let's see what Slack thinks about it. But the Bionic Eye says it's a peak, a mountain range, snow, outdoors, nature, mountain, ice, and glaciers.
I would add majestic to that list
Yes.
also.
Majestic.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things with Recognition is it doesn't do any adjectives.
No.
So it's not going. There are a lot of things that it doesn't like give you in terms of like adjectives. Like it's not going to say this is a pretty mountain. It's just going to say it's a
Which is
mountain.
also subjective.
Yeah.
It is very
Right.
So
subjective.
that could be a frightening mountain to some people.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
And actually, that is a pretty frightening mountain. I think if you were to climb it.
Yeah.
I actually don't know what mountain this is. Chris Nova probably knows.
Mount Everest.
Is that Mount Everest?
That's what it said. Yeah.
Oh, it does say that. So what we can do is we can dig in deeper using IOpipe. So this is the functions list, and I'm showing you an hour. And we have the invocations over time, the duration. So this actually processes the message. Every message in our Slack is actually sent to this Lambda. So you can this graph is actually the messages in our Slack over the last hour.
It's active.
It's very active, I imagine so, being at reInvent and all the company, yes.
So I can dig in here, and I can do like searches. So I can, US West 2, for instance, and just see all those based on that tag. Or I can do based on their name. So Corey is our front-end developer. These are ones he has his name inside the functions. So I'm going to click in here, and we can also see invocations, successes, errors, durations. We also have an app deck, so you can get just a very general high-level metric for these, and then you can set alerts on most of these metrics. So I'm going to click into this, and you can see we have a couple of alerts. One is we have hot dogs, which maybe I'll get to in a little bit. And errors. So we just have alerts. If there's an error, you're going to be notified about it. Invocations over time. These are just all the relatively basic metrics. One metric that we'll be releasing very soon is process counts. So you're going to be able to see the containers that Amazon is managing for you in the back end. So then you'll be able to do things like see memory usage over time per container. So that way you can actually visualize memory leaks. Because if you just do memory over time as an aggregate, right, it averages out because there's many containers. But then when you look at it on a per container view, you actually can see those memory leaks. So we're going to be adding that very shortly.
Yeah, it's amazing how much averaging out metrics hides like underlying issues, like people who don't look at 99th percentile, for example. So like that's very, very helpful.
Exactly, yeah. And the fact that we're like really deep, with a lot of insight into the containers and everything about the Lambda allows us to really get away from the averages of just the function level view.
Yes.
So we can, we actually don't have any errors for this function, but we can show cold starts. And you can also these are additive, so like all the ones that are errors with cold starts, which we don't have. So we can go in and we can look at specific cold starts. And this is actually an invocation now. So we're looking at the record of an invocation. Most of the raw metrics that are graphed on the other pages, so like idle percentages, CPU, you can see, how much time is spent in I/O. This is actually kind of old. I guess it was an old one, didn't have custom metrics on it. But we have tracing. So this tracing, you can add tags inside of your Lambda function, and then you just set timers basically between these 2 points. Now this particular application uses promises. This is a Node.js application. So using the promises, this starts when the promise is created, and then it ends when it's resolved. But then what happens is we now also have launched the profiling. So we'll be able to go into the profiler view. So I'm going to download that and load it. So I've actually already preloaded this because we. I can make this text much, much bigger.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Nice.
So you go into Google DevTools. This is actually part of Chrome, and you load this in. And then you can see all of these. So you can see the promises created here, but then you can actually see as it's created, and you can also see as it's resolved. So unlike the high-level tracing view, which is more of the application level, this is actually coming outside of the internals of the Node.js V8 engine. So we get what's actually being resolved and run, not in terms of how the code was written, but how it's actually being run by the process.
Absolutely, because there's multiple things that might be happening within that one Lambda function. So what piece, if you're trying to optimize it or debug it, this lets you target in on that.
Exactly. It's like, there's a difference basically between like the code that you write and like what an engine like Node.js or like a JVM, for instance, is going to actually run, right? It's it's basically scheduled and like it's compiled in the bytecode. It's not, the thing that's run is never, in pretty much any language these days, it's never exactly the thing that you wrote, right? Everything is optimized and compiled down. So this is what's actually happening. So we can kind of dig in here and we can see, well, so I believe, well, I may have zoomed in a little too much. So, oh, I see. I have the scroll bar over here. Let's see, mark data. So this is actually the performance marker. So setting the performance marker is taking 16 milliseconds out of the invocation, which is really interesting because it doesn't do a lot. One thing I've noticed is that like this is on I think a 256 memory tier on Lambda, and what we see with that is the performance differences. So for instance, if I reran this on a higher memory tier on Lambda, everything gets much, much smaller because the code gets more time to execute. Because even running a regular expression, we notice in the profiling data, if I can find it here. And I don't know if I'm going to find it.
A couple minutes left.
Yeah.
But I want to. So if somebody wants to start playing with this,
yes.
Where do you recommend they go?
Yeah, so you can go to IOpipe.com.
Perfect. And if they want to find you here at reInvent, how do they track you down? Do they message you on?
The best way is to hit us up on Twitter at IOpipes.
Excellent. And one question I have is, you have a really great story about getting funding as a startup.
Yes.
Can you share that?
Yeah. So we came here last year, and we learned a lot about the new releases that were happening. We talked to a bunch of Lambda users, and then there were some parties at night, and there were some venture capital parties. We went to that last year, and a few weeks later, we ended up getting $2.5 million in funding for our startup. So last year's reInvent was a pretty amazing return on investment for a startup like ourselves.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you are a startup, definitely start making plans for reInvent 2018. Attend, there's lots of value. And yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks
a lot. It was great.
Thank you.